The NFL season is upon us, and 1 week from this Thursday, today, as well as this upcoming Sunday, it all plays out live. Who's on tap in week 1 for the Buffalo Bills? Who's got the game opener in week 1 of the NFL season? Plus, the playoff race in the MLB is heating up. Where do the Blue Jays stand? All this and much more on this month's edition of Weekly in Sports. I am Scott, and it's time for another edition of the Weekly in Sports podcast. Here we go.
Welcome to What's Happening in the Sports World Today, hosted by your host of the Sports for Beginners podcast, Scott McGregor. Today, Scott has some exciting news for all of you listening today. I wonder what it could be, so let's find out and join Scott in the studio now.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Weekly in Sports, the podcast. My name is Scott. Of course, I am Scott McGregor, but you can just call me Scott. I am the host of Sports for Beginners, the podcast, as well as host of this program. This is our next installment of the podcast version, as we have taken the month of July off, and this is just another installment. We have had a June show. We had a show in January, as I mentioned. We had one in May, April, and also one in February, which we called a new chapter of Weekly in Sports, or WISP for short, is finally beginning. And this is another chapter of that show finally becoming a podcast. It started in January, finally as a podcast, continued in February, went through April, went through May, on to June, took a hiatus for the month of July, and specifically the MLB All-Star break. And now here we are again, back with you once again. All right, on today's show, we are going to be talking about where the Blue Jays sit as play begins today. In the MLB, we have a couple of games underway as we speak. We'll get to that in just a moment. And we have a couple of games still on the slate today, as our recording is for Thursday, August 28th, 2025. A couple of games just starting and a couple of games still to come. Speaking of games still to come, we'll also dive in later to the NFL schedule. Stay tuned later in this episode for a special announcement regarding Sports for Beginners bonus content in week number 1 of the NFL season. You'll find out about that later in the show. We also still have our podcast shoutouts of the week that will be coming up in the second portion of the show. But leading us off, before we jump to the Major League Baseball side of things, among all the other things we could do, leading us off today, we're starting on a bit of a somber note, as you're going to see on our screen in a moment from the USA Today. We will have a little bit of a look here at the article and join the Minnesota Twins, Minnesota Vikings, and all of the Minnesota sports teams, including the WNBA's Minnesota Lynx, in a moment of silence to honor those impacted by my condolences with those impacted by this church school shooting. USA Today's Chris B, sorry Chris if I pronounced your last name wrong, reports Two children were killed and at least 17 others injured in a mass shooting at a Minneapolis Catholic church. The Minnesota Vikings, Twins, Timberwolves, and Linex released statements offering condolences and support. Nine of the most serious injured victims were children ages 6 to 14. Two children were killed Wednesday, with at least 17 people injured following a mass shooting at Minneapolis Catholic Church. The Minnesota sports community offered statements of support in the aftermath. A statement by the Minnesota Vikings reaches out and says, "We are devastated by the horrific violence that took place at a church in Minnesota or in Minneapolis this morning," they said in a statement, and they added, "Our hearts are broken for the victims, their families, and all who have been impacted by the senseless of cowardly act. We are praying for the injured, those who witnessed the attack, and the first responders who were on the scene providing care and support during this tragedy." A statement by the Minnesota Twins, who were playing the Blue Jays at that time, later in the evening, said, "The taking of innocent lives in a place of learning and worship is incomprehensible. Our deepest sympathies and prayers are with the victims, their families, and all who have been affected. Alongside our community, we mourn this tragedy and yearn for a future, I should say, not a year, a future where such violence no longer shatters lives. We are also profoundly grateful to the first responders whose courage prevented the even greater loss." They added in the statement as posted on what they now call X, but I still call Twitter, "The Minnesota Twins are heartbroken by today's tragic and senseless mass shooting at Annocation Church." I'm going to go with a church in case I pronounce that wrong, and school in South Minneapolis. And then, of course, everything I just read in the quote. The Minnesota Timberwolves also said in a statement, with a joint statement with the Minnesota Linex, "As members of this community, we stand together in mourning. No child should feel unsafe in a place of learning and worship, and no family should endure such unimaginable loss." According to the full statement put out by the Linex, they said, "We are deeply heartbroken by the tragic shooting that occurred this morning during a school mass in our Minneapolis community. Our thoughts and deepest sympathies are with the victims, their families, and everyone whose lives have been forever changed by this senseless act of violence. As members of this community, we stand together more in mourning." Okay, regardless, I said morning, but I meant to say mourning. Mourning. No child should ever feel unsafe in a place of learning or worship, and no family should ever endure such an unimaginable. Together with all Minnesota, we mourn this tragic loss and extend strength and compassion to everyone affected. Mayor Frey has shared that the city's Family Resource Center is available to provide support to those affected, and we encourage anyone in need to take advantage of those services. Again, as you can also see, there was the final score of the game the Twins were playing, and there's also where the records stand as the Blue Jays prepare for a series with the Milwaukee Brewers, and the Twins prepare for their next series, which also takes place on Friday as well. The Twins will be back at home in Minneapolis against the Padres. They lost 9-8 in the finale of a 3-game series with the Blue Jays, in which the Jays would take the series 2 games-3. 2 games out of 3, I should say. So 2 games-1 to be more specific, 2 out of 3 to win the series. Again, it continues to say nine of the most seriously injured victims included children who ranged from age 6 to 14. A terrible, terrible, terrible thing happened Wednesday morning, and You can already see the support coming out from across the globe and of course all over Minneapolis. I am going to play for you through the Minnesota side of things. I am going to play for you if we have the video available. The what the Blue Jays did prior to this ball game. The Toronto Blue Jays held a moment of silence to honor those affected by this terrible church shooting in Minneapolis. It was an absolutely terrible scene, but credit to the Blue Jays and Rogers Center for bringing a moment of silence to the world we know as baseball. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we go back to that moment of silence in which the Blue Jays held before the game, there is no video, but as we go back to it, I will read what the Blue Jays posted on Instagram when they held a moment of silence just before the game at Rogers Center last night. Before tonight's game, we joined the Twins in observing a moment of silence for the victims of today's mass shooting at a church and school in South Minneapolis. And it was not something we thought we would really see, but it happened Wednesday morning. So, right now, ladies and gentlemen, before we go any further with baseball talk, I would like to take this moment of our show to honor the victims of this mass shooting on Wednesday. We are going to do a moment of silence to honor those impacted. And while we do a moment of silence, before we continue, I will say a quick prayer to honor those affected by this tragic shooting in South Minneapolis Wednesday. With that, please join me now in a moment of silence to honor those affected by the mass shooting. Thank you. And now for the prayer before we go any further. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Lord, please, we pray that those affected by this mass church school shooting in South Minneapolis find peace and love in your loving arms. For those who have passed away, for the young children who have been among those who have been injured, we pray for the first responders in South Minneapolis, Minnesota. We also pray for those of the men, women, and children who have been affected, that they may find peace throughout this difficult time. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. In the name of Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So, with that said, what we're going to do now is I'm going to give you a quick look around the league, the MLB, one of the main areas where the action has been taking place, and all of that good stuff from the Minnesota Twins, the Lionx, the Timberwolves. We also had one coming in from the Minnesota Frost, and of course the Minnesota Vikings contributing as well. We will talk about the Vikings a little bit more when we get to our football talk, but here we go. Let's take a look at our action going on so far. Right now, we have a couple of games going on right now. We have a 2-2 tie between the Boston Red Sox and the Baltimore Orioles. That series going on right now. They are in the top of the 8 in a 2-2 tie. Elsewhere around the majors, we have the Houston Astros leading the Colorado Rockies 3-1 in the top of the 4th inning. The Milwaukee Brewers, who the Blue Jays will face on Friday, the day after today's show, they currently trail the Arizona Diamondbacks 6-2. The Blue Jays will face the Brewers on Friday. That one is headed to the bottom of the 3rd inning. Also headed to the bottom of the 3rd inning, we have the Pirates leading the Cardinals 1-0. So just a recap of the current scores underway. The Red Sox lead the Orioles 2-2. Sorry, the Red Sox and Orioles are tied at 2 runs apiece. In the top of the 4th, the Rockies were losing 3-1 to the Astros. They are now losing 3-2. In the bottom of the third now, the Pirates lead the Cardinals 1-0. Coming up later on the schedule, we've got the Chicago Cubs in San Francisco taking on the Giants. That's coming up in just under a couple of minutes from now. That's about 3:45 p.m. Eastern start time, 2:45 p.m. Central. Later on tonight, as far as the AL East is concerned, you will have the New York Yankees taking on the Chicago White Sox. The New York Yankees going into play are 73 and 66, 73 and 60, I should say. The Chicago White Sox are 48 and 85 heading into play tonight. That game is at 7:40 p.m. Eastern, 6:40 p.m. Central. Coming up at 6:45 p.m. Eastern, speaking of that, the Phillies will take on the Atlanta Braves. The Phillies going into play are 76 and 57. The Braves are 61 and 72. And last but certainly not least, the game before that Yankees White Sox game, which is at 7:40 p.m. Eastern. At 7:10 p.m. Eastern, it's the Miami Marlins, who are 62 and 71, going up against the 72 and 61 Mets of New York. Pitching matchup for the Marlins has yet to be determined, but pitching matchup for the Yankee game, that features Will Warren going for the Yankees against Davis Martin, who will go for the White Sox. In the Philadelphia matchup, it will be going for the Phillies against Cal Quantrill, who will go for the Braves. And for the Cubbies coming up, it will be Logan Webb for the Giants. He'll go against Shota Amanga, Shoge Amanga, Shota. Sorry about that. If I pronounce that wrong, if I pronounce the name wrong, I sincerely apologize. I'm gonna go with SI just in case I did pronounce the name wrong. So my sincerest apologies. All right. So Red Sox have grabbed a 3-2 lead as we've been talking. That game is going to the middle of the eighth, which means they're going to the bottom of the eighth. 3-2 Sox over the Orioles. Bottom four, we go in Houston. It is 3-2 Astros over the Rockies. And what was 6-1 is now 6-2 in the bottom of the third for the Brewers, and it was actually 6-2 before, so it hasn't changed yet in the third inning, but it is 6-2 Braves, sorry, not Braves, Diamondbacks over the Brewers, and the starting pitchers for the Diamondbacks and of course the Milwaukee Brewers. Nabil Crismet going for the Diamondbacks, and over on Milwaukee side, it's Jose Quintana going for the Brewers. Alrighty, the Brewers and Diamondbacks going into play today are at records of 65 and 69 for the Diamondbacks, 83 and 51 for the Brewers. Whoever wins this game, if it's the Diamondbacks will go to 66 and 69. However, if it is Milwaukee, Milwaukee's record will go to 84 and 51. If Milwaukee loses, it will go from 83 and 51 to 83 and 52. And the Diamondbacks record, as I mentioned, will go from 65 and 69 to 66 and 69. If the Brewers win, their record will go to 84 and 51. The Diamondbacks will go to 65 and 70 in terms of records. And speaking of that, as we keep an eye on Boston, if the Red Sox win this game, they will go to 75 and 60, and the Orioles record would go to 60 and 74. However, if the Orioles can stun the Red Sox and maybe walk it off, that record for the Orioles would go to 61 and 73. And the record for the Red Sox would drop to 74 and 61. All right, we're going to be keeping a close eye on that action as it continues to go on. But coming up next, as we take our first commercial break of the show, who made the three-man roster for the Buffalo Bills. What exciting matchups do we have in store for week 1 of the NFL season? And it's time for Shoutouts of the Month. That's the segment where we, as a host, and you, as the listeners, provide us with podcast shoutouts that you are listening to that you would love for us to give a shout out to. This is also a timeline where even if it was for sports for beginners, but it's only for weekly in sports, you could give us the opportunity to give a shout out to a potential broadcaster we haven't had on the show that you may want us to track down. We'll get to all of that coming up next. Also, still to come, we have a very special announcement for Sports for Beginners for the week 1 action of the National Football League. And in terms of our teams we cover, I cover, of course, the Bills because I'm a Bills fan. And of course, our host of On the Ice and Behind the Benches, Thomas McGregor, handles the coverage for the Miami Dolphins. Stay tuned for that special announcement. Still to come. And also still to come, where do the Blue Jays stand? We'll wait to see what happens in the Red Sox-Oriole game, as we are still waiting to see what would happen with the Yankees and the Red Sox. But once that Red Sox-Orioles game goes final, we will provide you with where the Blue Jays stand currently among baseball in the American League and among the division in the AL East. All of that still to come, so be sure to stick with us. Perhaps I will read the Minnesota Frost statement put out by the Frost after the tragic events that happened on Wednesday. This is Sports for Beginners is weekly in sports show, and it continues momentarily, so be sure to stick with us.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo, two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
CNT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down, nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
We welcome everyone back into Weekly in Sports. This is the end of the month August program, our program after the hiatus from the July month because of the MLB All-Star break. Hope everyone enjoyed that All-Star break. It was definitely one for the history books with a swing-off tiebreaker deciding the Midsummer Classic between the American League and the National League. Before we jump the gun to football, and of course, get into our shout outs of the month, including podcasts and broadcasters whom we might be able to track down to get on the show. I'd like to read the statement from the Minnesota Frost regarding Wednesday's events. And if you missed it earlier, rewind a little bit to the moment of silence, followed by the Our Father prayer I put out before the first break of the show. In a statement the Frost released, they said the following statement: "Our hearts are broken by the horrific violence at Annunciation Church in Minneapolis." Annunciation Church. Okay, I'm going to go with a church in Minneapolis. Sorry about that. For those listening in Minnesota, Minneapolis, trying to pronounce the church name is a little hard for me. Very, very truly sorry about that. Anyways, it continues. "We mourn alongside those who have lost loved ones, and our thoughts are with the victims and all of those impacted by this devastating act of violence. The Minnesota Frost stand united against hate in all its forms. Everyone in our community, especially children, deserves to feel safe, supported, and free from fear. Please hold your loved ones close, and let's continue working toward a world where every person can live without violence. What a beautiful statement. Oh, by the way, also, I know it's 3 days ago from today, but the Minnesota Frost also welcomed as an assistant coach Hockey USA Hockey Hall of Famer and member of the Hall of Fame class of 2025, Brianna Decker. She is joining the Frost as an assistant coach, and there was a link in their story or bio to learn more about it, as they put out in quotation, "Hi coach," followed by "we all say in you son." Anyways, you know what? I'm gonna leave it at "hi coach," which is what they quoted. And in case you're not already aware, by now I would imagine you are still aware, and you are aware. But for those who may not be aware, the Minnesota Frost have repeated after their inaugural season as PWHL Minnesota when they became the first team in the history of the league to win the Walter Cup. They have done it now twice in franchise history and twice in league history, and they are the only team out of the original six, as two new teams come into play, Vancouver and Seattle. Minnesota Frost are the only team in PWHL history to win the Walter Cup and repeat in back-to-back seasons. How will it go in season number 3 for the original 6 teams, Ottawa, Minnesota, Toronto, New York, Montreal, and Boston? How will it go for the first run for Vancouver and Seattle? All those questions will be answered when we get close enough to game time, and specifically puck drop. We will talk about podcast shoutouts in just a moment. But first, as I mentioned before the break, is time to break down the 2025 Week 1 NFL schedule. Here we go. It all begins Thursday, September the 4th, 2025. That's next Thursday, September 4th, 2025, when the Dallas Cowboys visit A.J. Brown and the Philadelphia Eagles at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia, PA at 8. It's gonna be a good one. Eagles, Cowboys on NFL Kickoff Day next Thursday at 8:20 p.m. Then on Friday, how about a little international action? The Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers are headed to Arena Corinthians in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Shout out to our Sao Paulo, Brazil listeners. Game time on the Eastern side is at 8 Eastern, 7 Central, and that features the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers. So the reigning defending Super Bowl champion Eagles host the Cowboys on opening night, Thursday, September the 4th, 2025. Next Friday, it's the Chargers and the Chiefs at 8 p.m. Eastern. Should be a good one. And a reminder on Monday, ahead of Monday Night Football, we will look at Thursday and Friday. And then, of course, we will also look at all the action from Sunday. Speaking of Sunday, that's September the 7th, 2025. And that's next Sunday, not this Sunday. This Sunday is August 31st, 2025, the last day of August. So the following Sunday, as I said, next Sunday, we got a jam-packed lineup. First, in the 1 o'clock slate, in the 1 p.m. slate, ladies and gentlemen, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going toe-to-toe with the Atlanta Falcons. Also at 1 p.m., the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow take on the Cleveland Dog Pound Browns, and that should be a good one, from Cleveland at Huntington Bank Park, Huntington Bank Field, I should say. The game between the Buccaneers and Falcons is at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And speaking of arenas and teams, also in the 1 o'clock slate, we got the Colts at Lucas Oil Stadium hosting the Miami Dolphins. That is going to be a good one. Between the Dolphins, bam, and the Colts, bam. Moving further along in the 1 o'clock slate, we got the Panthers of Carolina taking on the Jags of Jacksonville. Jaguars hosting the Panthers at 1 p.m. Eastern. on Sunday. And among those games, we also say hello to Gillette Stadium in Foxborough as the Patriots host the Raiders at 1 p.m. Eastern. Plus, it's the Cardinals taking on the New Orleans Saints from the Caesars Superdome. The Commanders from Northwest Stadium will host the G-Man Giants, also at 1 p.m. And from MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, it is the New York Jets. Jets going toe-to-toe against the black and gold Pittsburgh Steelers. All those games at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to try to keep my voice down here as we roll on through the schedule. So I took a little bit of a pause there, but rolling through our schedule. Not too many games in the 4 p.m. slate. Two at 4:05 p.m. Those include Empower Field at Mile High in Denver, Colorado, as the Denver Broncos go toe-to-toe with the Tennessee Titans. Then later, the San Francisco 49ers also in action at that time from Lumen Field in Seattle, Washington, as the Seattle Seahawks host in the 4:25 p.m. slot. The Rams will take on the Houston Texans from SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California, and live from Green Bay, Wisconsin. It is Lambeau Field, the site of Packers Lions at 4:25 p.m. Eastern. It could not have been scripted any better to be a starting point for the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. Jackson versus Allen live on Sunday Night Football from Buffalo. It's the Bills versus the Ravens under the lights in prime time from Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, New York. 8:20 p.m. Eastern, 7:20 p.m. Central. You will not want to miss this ball game. Then on Monday, it's the Vikings versus the Bears. 8:15 p.m. Eastern, 7:15 p.m. Central. Live on Monday Night Football. Games in prime time. For Thursday, that game is live on NBC broadcast. Game on Friday, also live, but can be found on and a few other areas. Monday Night Football, ESPN and ABC will have you covered for Bears and Vikings. Sunday Night Football, where else can you catch this ball game but NBC? The afternoon slate from 1 p.m. to 4:25 p.m. belongs to CBS and Fox. And what a schedule they have. All right, let's talk a little bit about, before we get to how the Bills' 53-man roster shapes up, let's talk a little bit about this matchup. Ravens-Bills. Last time these two teams met was the AFC divisional round. This, of course, led to a Buffalo loss in, yep, you guessed it, when they were playing the Chiefs. This led to a loss last season in the playoffs after the divisional win, which some might call, phew, that was close. We almost lost the divisional round. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I thought that too, to be honest. Anywho, the Buffalo Bills knock off the Baltimore Ravens in the divisional round of the playoffs. They move on to the conference championship after defeating the Ravens, the AFC championship game, if you will. And yep, they fell 22-29, we know, to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Ravens lost in the AFC divisional round 27-25 on January 19th, 2025, earlier this year. And here we go, getting ready for, I guess you could say, round two. This time it's in week number one. Couple of stats to keep in mind here in the 2024 head-to-head. The Ravens, even though this is heading into 2025, we have the 2024 head-to-head here. The Ravens were third in points per game at 30.5. The Bills were 30.9 and second in the league for points per game. The Bills did not have a lot of passing yards per game in 2024, or ranked 17th in the league with that. at 231.6 yards. Baltimore ranking number 8 at 246.4 yards. The rushing game for the Bills was not great in 2024. They were ninth in the league in 2024, 231.6 yards. Baltimore 246.4 yards passing, 187.6 yards rushing, 87.6 yards, which ranked first in the league rushing yards per game. In total interceptions, the Bills were fifth in the league with 16 interceptions, Ravens 18 with only 12 interceptions total. In sacks, Buffalo ranked 18th in the league with 39. Baltimore ranking almost top of the barrel there at like top of the food chain at number 1, but they rank second in the lead with defensive total sacks. They had 50 in 2024. No injury report to bring out for you right now, but with that said, 2024 season leaders included Lamar Jackson, 4,172 passing yards, a completion percentage of 66.7, 41 touchdowns, 4 picks, which is another word for interceptions. Derrick Henry, 1,921 yards, 325 attempts, 16 touchdowns. He averaged 5.9 yards per rush in 2024. And wide receiver Zay Flowers, 1,059 receiving yards, 74 receiving receptions, I should say. 74 receptions, 4 touchdowns, 14.31 average in receiving yards. On the Bills side, of course, you can't forget about Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson as one of the leaders in quarterback. Josh finished the year last year with 6 INTs, 28 touchdowns, a completion percentage of 63.6, and he passed for 3,731 yards in 2024. James Cook at running back, 16 touchdowns, 4.8 yards average per rush, 207 attempts. For the entirety of 2024 season, he had 1,009 rushing yards for the year. And the lead receiver in 2024 was Kale Shakir, 76 receptions, 4 touchdowns, 10.8 average yards per rushing, 821 yards, receiving the ball at wide receiver. So you got Josh Allen, James Cook, and Kale Shakir versus Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and Zay Flowers. I'm going to tell you right now here on Weekly in Sports that those 3 guys I just mentioned, Zay Flowers, Derrick King Henry, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, James Cook, and Kale Shakir, those are guys I am going to be paying a lot of attention to come Sunday Night Football this coming Sunday after this, or sorry, I should say next Sunday following this game, because this Sunday is the 31st and the action starts for Sunday Night Football. It starts on September 7th, which is the next Sunday. But all that aside, Zay Flowers, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, James Cook, Josh Allen, and Kale Shakir, those 3 guys are going to be very key contributors in this game to watch. Another guy on the Ravens side to watch, Mark Andrews. Mark is ready for a taste of revenge after losing that divisional round because of a catch he probably should have had that would have ended things for Buffalo in the divisional round last year. But what do you want to call it? A lucky break for the Bills? A lucky drop for the Bills? That could have ultimately resulted in the Bills' demise in the divisional game last year, but the Bills were able to say that was close and move on to where they would eventually be eliminated by a familiar foe in Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and the Kansas City Chiefs. Speaking of Travis Kelce, but before we go from this to get to that break, congratulations to the new newlyweds. Earlier this week, the news broke that Travis and Taylor Swift, the music artist and the Kansas City football wide receiver, Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, are engaged and most likely getting married. When you think of the word engaged, You think they're going to be getting married. Speaking of getting married, Josh Allen got married over the off season to Haley Steinfeld. But congratulations to Josh and Haley on their marriage. Coming up when we continue on Weekly in Sports, not only will we start off by getting into our podcast shoutouts of the month, but it is also time for us to reveal the big news for Sports for Beginners about a triple play happening for week 1 of the season. Find out what happens here coming up next. Also, a quick little broadcasting note for you from Broadcast Map. It had been made officially noted to us that she will be in the studio with Ali today. It was a work of guests. Statement from Ali change. Ali says, "Good afternoon. I would like to inform you of a slight schedule change. So, at 2:30 p.m. on today, the day August 28th, 2025, Thursday. First, he asked a question. Were you wondering what happened to Jenny Boulevard last week? Wonder no more. She will be live to discuss her experiences in broadcasting. And coming up at 4:30 p.m. later on today, so coming up momentarily, Matt Condell is back to talk broadcasting and technology. You can follow all the Broadcast Map podcast on Apple Podcasts by searching in your search bar https://podcasts.apple.com/.ca/podcast/broadcast map, or in Spotify by going to https://show. The podcast is also available on YouTube. Just type in http://www.youtube.com/@broadcastmap. The show also has a Facebook page. Ali is also on Blue Sky, Mastodon, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also available on WhatsApp. But I'll provide a link to the YouTube channel so that you can follow and subscribe to the podcast. I'm sure the WhatsApp group chat and everything else will be provided in the description of episodes for you for Broadcast Map. So just a quick reminder, going on right now, probably over by now, but at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, it was Jenny Boulevard. She would be in the studio to discuss her experiences in broadcasting. She was not available last week. She is available this week. And Matt Condell is coming into the studio to talk broadcasting and technology. That coming up at 4:30 p.m. All great shows. Hope you enjoy them. Looking forward to seeing what's in store. And with that, that's a great segue into our podcast shoutouts of the month, which come your way, along with a look at the Bills' 53-man roster for Buffalo's 2025 season. And we will do all of that when we return to Weekly in Sports. Stay with us. Just one more break after this, but after this break, Bills' 53-man roster podcast shoutouts of the month. And then it's time to reveal what the triple play on Sports for Beginners has in store for you for week 1 of the NFL season. Stay tuned to the end of the episode to find out. We'll be right back. Looking for a good hockey podcast that covers your favorite hockey teams and mine? Check out On the Ice and Behind the Benches, where we chat about our favorite hockey teams from puck drop to the last play of the action. To learn more, follow the On the Ice and Behind the Benches Facebook page. Search On the Ice and Behind the Benches. Looking for a sports podcast that covers sports weekly as well as gets you set up for the day? Check out Weekly in Sports with me, Scott McGregor. We give some shoutouts of the week to podcasts like this one and those who do them. Discuss the Blue Jays, Bills, Raptors, and more. To learn more, check out the Sports for Beginners Facebook page. Search Sports for Beginners. It continues On Weekly in Sports, the end of the month August program is continuing on. I am, of course, your host, Scott McGregor. One quick thing to bring up before we jump into the podcast shoutouts of the month that is coming up in just a few minutes. The Bills, as of recently, have made the following signings. I'm going to read them through the NFL app. Download the app for yourself. Follow your favorite football team all year long, all season long. The Buffalo Bills have signed defensive end Andre Jones Jr. to the practice squad. They have also signed cornerback, or in short, CB, Jalen Kimbrer, to the practice squad as well. The Bills have also, in order to make this official, they have also cut cornerback Daquan Hardy from the practice squad. And in uniform news, as I'm sure you saw in the recent video the Bills posted, if you follow the team like that, the Bills unveiled their all-white Rivalry uniforms, which will debut Week 5 versus the Patriots. So we're going to see what those babies look like in Week number 5. Now, as of this very moment, many of the people in this post mentioned might have been released or remain with the team. Now, I kind of made an oops during the preseason finale Bills post game show. I want to make sure I wasn't saying baseball. Bills post game show. I kept saying Sam, but I should have said Shane Buechele. He was released, but he was also put on the practice squad here. Among him, we also have running back Frank Gore Jr., Steven Gosnell, wide receiver Christian Wilkinson, tight end Kelki Latu. I'm going to go with K. Latu, Travis Clayton, Dan Feeney, Kendrick Green, all those men, linemen, safeties, Sam Franklin, and welcome back Jordan Poyer. Daquan Hardy, who I just mentioned, was released. He was signed to the practice squad, but then later released as of today's recording. Dane Jackson is also up on the list at cornerback. We also have linebacker Jimmy Ciarlo and Keonta Jenkins, and defensive tackle Jordan Phillips, as well as defensive tackle Zion Lowe. I had that right the first time. That's okay. Like I had said before, apologies if I pronounce anybody's name wrong at any point in time. During this report, which came from Alec White, the Bills had signed 16 players to the practice squad, including Jordan Poyer, Dane Jackson, Jordan Phillips, Zion Logue, Sam Franklin, Daquan Hardy, Kendrick Green, Dan Feeney, Travis Clayton, Kay Latu, Christian Wilkerson, Steven Gosnell, Frank Gore Jr., Shane Buechele, Jimmy and Sam Franklin, in that order, to the team's practice squad Wednesday, just one day after setting their initial 53-man roster for the start of the 2025 season. The list is sorted by position group. Quarterback, Shane Buechele. Running back, Frank Gore. Wide receiver, Steven Gosnell, Christian Wilkerson. Tight end, Kay Latu. Offensive lineman, Kendrick Green, Dan Feeney, Travis Clayton. Defensive line, Zion Logue, Jordan Phillips. Linebackers, Keontae Jenkins, Jimmy C. Cornerback, Daquan Hardy, Dane Jackson. Safeties, Jordan Poyer, Sam Franklin. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the guys who made the three-man roster, as also reported by Alec White, the content manager of the Buffalo Bills. It should be no surprise who has made this roster. At the time, the Buffalo Bills have finalized their initial 53-man roster ahead of the start of the 2025 season. Scroll down to see the full roster. Well, that roster includes quarterbacks, Josh Allen at QB1, and QB number 2 is Mitchell Trubinsky. Not really a shocker for that one. The Bills have 4 running backs, including James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, and Reggie Gilliam, a fullback too. Wide receivers, 6 of them. We got Kale Shakir, Keon Coleman, Joshua Palmer, Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, and Tyrell Shavers. By the way, Joshua Palmer is a Toronto native. And Fun fact, this season or last season, I've got to remember when it was, he threw out the ceremonial first pitch at one of the Toronto Blue Jays games. If you don't believe me, just check out Buffalo Bills' stories on social or go to @BlueJays on social and look there. Moving on, tight ends. We have three of them on the 53-man roster. They are Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, and Jackson Halls. The offensive line includes 9. They are Dion Dawkins, David Edwards, Connor McGovern, Osiris Torrance, Spencer Brown, Alec Anderson, Cedric Van Prangranger, Chase Lundit, Ryan Vandermark, as well, I should say. On the defensive end, they are Joey Bosa, Greg Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, Javon Salmon, and Landon Jackson. At defensive tackle, 5 of those: Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, TJ Sanders, Deion Walker, Dwayne Carter. At linebacker, Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, Dorian Williams, Joe Anderson, Shaq Thompson. Before we get to safeties, here are the defensive backs. There are 7 of them. Christian Benford, Trey Davius White. Welcome back to the fold, Trey Davius White. Dorian Strong, Jamarcus Ingram, Taron Johnson, Cam Lewis, and Brandon Codrington. At safety, we have 4 safeties. They include Damar Hamlin, Cole Bishop, Taylor Rapp, and Jordan Hancock. Specialists, they include kicker Tyler Bass, punter Brad Robbins, long safety, I'm not sure what LS stands for, but that is Reed Ferguson. On the injured reserve, at the time this was made official, was cornerback Maxwell Hairston and O-lineman Tylen Grable. It's okay. Maxwell and Grable are designated as eligible to return and are eligible to be activated week 5. Now, 2 players that are eligible to return in week 8 against Carolina are on the reserve and suspended area. They are defensive end Michael H. and defensive tackle Larry Ogunjanobi. Larry, if I pronounced the last name wrong, sincerest apologies. Same thing to you, Michael. I didn't really pronounce your last name because I thought I might screw it up, so I didn't want to do that. And yes, of course, there were 27 players released prior to that. So what a couple of days it has been for Buffalo. I mentioned the Bills are bringing back their all-white Rivalry uniforms, and I also mentioned that they've released cornerback Daquan Hardy in exchange for signing defensive end Andre Jones Jr. and cornerback Jalen Kimbrough to the practice squad. In other Buffalo Bills news, Damar Hamlin hosts 3rd annual back-to-school event in Buffalo. What a day for Damar Hamlin to be doing this. Seasonal associate K. Racine with the latest on this, says Bills safety Damar Hamlin hosted his 3rd annual back-to-school event with his Chasing M's Foundation at the historic Johnny B. Willie Amateur Athletic Sports Pavilion Monday afternoon. So today is Thursday, that was 3 days ago. The article came out yesterday. The event drew more than 1,300 attendees and provided free school supplies, haircuts, food, football training, and life-saving CPR instruction. Over 1,000 backpacks filled with school supplies were distributed to students as families gathered for a day of fun, community, support, and health education. Hamlin said in a statement, to be able to provide that fresh feeling of a haircut, school supplies, kids are ready and well equipped with all the resources that they need to be successful. I hope they have an amazing school year. Hamlin used his recovery from cardiac arrest as a platform to raise awareness about CPR and the importance of AEDs. This year, 250 attendees received hands-only CPR training, a central feature of the event made possible through a partnership with the American Heart Association. Hamlin said, "You go through You grow through what you grow, you grow through what you go through to be out there, to be out here and be able to stop the leading cause of death in youth sports, which is sudden cardiac arrest, which something that I experienced. It means a lot to me and it gives me life purpose. It gives my life purpose, is what he said, excuse me, even further than my passion, which is football. You never know when you're going to need that as a superpower to save somebody you love, he added. What a day for Damar. I really like this. This is something really, really good to keep an eye on. Like, watching sports and all is like, don't get me wrong, football fans and fans of sports in general, don't get me wrong. Watching sports just for the thrill of the game is is good and all. It's great. I love everything about it. But my golly, when you think of the word CPR and you think of the word cardiac arrest, you just never really know when it's going to come. So, Damar, if you're listening to this right now, first of all, good luck this season. Look forward to watching you play on Sunday Night Football if you do play. If not, hopefully you play at some point. Good luck to the Bills this season. Looking forward to covering it from the post-game side of things and a little bit of pre-game over the course of the season. We will see what we can do, but good luck to the boys in red, white, and blue. Maybe this is the year Bills Mafia gets what they want. Maybe this is the year. But regardless, being healthy goes beyond being football or baseball or whatever. Because if you're not healthy, how are you going to be able to continue your passion? All right, let's jump to this podcast thing because I feel like we're going to run out of time once again. Let's do it. We've ignored it for long enough. Let's do it. First shout out of the show for the shout outs of the month belongs to our good friends over at the Immeasurably More podcast. They just returned to action in uploading episodes. An episode came out yesterday. And it was an episode that they recorded before they went through everything that they went through over the past couple of days. If you haven't been following, Aaron and Parker were expecting a baby. And if you listen to the show, odds are you've been following what they've been doing and why they've been on hiatus for such a long time. Odds are you have been following that. And I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it was a part of their summer series, the episode that they released yesterday. It's not that long, actually. It was 5 minutes, to be honest, which is pretty short. And basically, it's conversations with God when you're tired, weary, and overwhelmed. First of all, congratulations to the Kelly family. First of all, congratulations also to Aaron and Parker on their baby boy. Boo, if I'm not okay, I may have said the name wrong, so my apologies to Aaron and Parker for that. And if I pronounce the Aaron word, and if I pronounce the name wrong, Jill, if you see I pronounced it wrong, I sincerely apologize. By the way, Jill is the mother of Aaron, who is the mother of her newborn son. And this was an episode they recorded that dropped yesterday prior to everything that went down with Baby Bean. Congratulations to the lovely couple once again, and I look forward to hearing more about it as the days go along. So the first shout out of the month is going to go to the Immeasurably More podcast crew, including Aaron, Parker, and Jill, and of course, the one, the only grandpa of Baby Bean, and you know him, you love him, Bills Mafia, Jim Kelly. Next up, our shout out is going to go to our friend over at Locked On Penguins, Hunter Hoodies. Trying my best to keep an eye on all the action, especially the Penguins action, but I do enjoy what the Locked On Podcast Network has in store on Locked On Penguins, as well as any of the other Locked On shows that they have, including Locked On NFL Scouting, which is where our next shout out of the week goes to. That is going to go to Kyle Krabs and the one, the only, Joe Marino. Joe is the host of Locked On Bills, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast with the Locked On Podcast Network, host of Locked On Dolphins, Kyle Krabs. Also recently, if you notice now, Joe Marino also has his own website. Yes, I'm not kidding. Joe Marino has his own website. I am not kidding. He has his own little website where you can listen to the show, Locked On Bills, Locked On NFL Scouting. You can even listen to one of Joe's newest shows. What is that, you may ask? Well, Joe has been talking about it for a while now. I haven't personally heard of it yet, but it's called the First Read Podcast, which is a fantasy football pod. Well, actually, it's a NFL film and analytics podcast hosted by Brett Whitefield and Joe Marino. How can you find out about this? Head to www.thejoemarino.com to find out about Joe's website. Listen to the pods he has started, including Locked On Bills, Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, and First Read, and subscribe and listen to the pod wherever you get your podcasts. Joe also has a Substack as well as a subtext community for things like herd mentality and much, much more. There is also a Discord community, but please refrain from doing that if you have accessibility issues. Once again, to take a look at all things, including some of Joe's books like Go Bills or Buffalo's Run, head over to www.thejoemarino.com. Again, www.thejoemarino.com is where to find it. You'll find Locked On Bills, Locked On NFL Scouting, and First Read all on the Joe Marino website. Go to www.thejoemarino.com to check things out. Also, a little note, you may have to pay for the books that Joe has written, but once again, if you want to check out the website, go to www.thejoemarino.com. Again, www.thejoemarino.com to find out about Locked On Bills, Locked On NFL Scouting, about Joe himself, his podcast, First Read, and everything else you may now already be accustomed to if you are an everyday listener to Locked On Bills, the website that I will provide in the description of this episode, as well as in a description of any other episode that we have, even should we have Joe on the show, which we're striving towards, that Joe released when he did actually officially launch the website. Anyways, www.thejoemarino.com is where you can check it out. Everything that Joe's been a part of, podcasts, herd mentality, books, events, and there's even a contact page as well as an about to learn more about Joe Marino himself. But once again, his website that it has been launched as of now, and he even posted about it, so it is a real thing. What I'm telling you, if you want to get in touch with Joe personally from his website, go to www.thejoemarino.com. Once again, that's www.thejoemarino.com. All right, with that said, our final shout out of the month, which will take us to our final break of the show, that is, yes, that is, it's going to go to our friends over at Broadcast Map and Sienna T Radio, making your day brighter one song at a time. Sienna, Allie, and the crew, Samantha, Robert, and Nick do an absolutely wonderful job on all the content that they provide. Nick does the melting pot. Samantha has the classical cafe. Sienna running 2 night shows, Thursday and Friday, alternating. You've got the Cosmopolitan Culture Club alternating on Thursdays. You've got the Song Bank alternating on Fridays. If Thursday or Fridays aren't working, you might even get a triple play, including the Melting Pot, the Classical Cafe, the Hourglass, and one of the 2 shows I mentioned, Cosmopolitan or the Song Bank, in the same day, which means you got a weekend full of music on a Saturday, no matter what day it is. Oh, and speaking of Sienna and Ali, of course, Ali does Broadcast Map. He also does a show with Makara called Ali and Makara's Books. New episodes launching every Monday. and it's also live on Mondays. Looking forward to seeing what we can get out of that. But with that being said, that will do it for this edition of Shoutouts of the Month for podcasts. It will be back on September, end of the month show. Should we be able to get one to you? Hopefully we are. For the final stop on the 162 games season, regular season edition, that is, because the Blue Jays, as we speak, and we'll talk more about it after the break, but as we speak, are in a good position as far as the American League and the American League East standings are concerned. The Blue Jays will be in playoff contention, but if they can stay where they are, they will likely not be playing in the wild card race. Hey, let's take it one series at a time. We got Milwaukee coming up on Friday, and we'll talk about that after we do a little football triple play announcement, which is coming your way next. Don't go anywhere. And in case you missed it, we will reiterate where to find Locked On Bills, Locked On NFL Scouting, and First Read, as well as the books I mentioned, Buffalo's Run and Go Bills. We will reiterate the website of where to go when we return. Back after this in 30 seconds, a minute 30 seconds to be exact, as we take a word from Broadcast Map and Sienna T Radio, making your day brighter one song at a time.
Hello? How are you, my friend? Why? What's the matter? Why feeling bored and lonely? Look at me. I am always happy. The only reason? I can tell you, it's because I listen to Sienna T Radio. All the best shows you can think of. The Melting Pot, the Cosmopolitan Culture Club, and the Song Bank. There are also many more new shows to come. Please make sure to visit her website at http://siennat.wordpress.com/siennat-radio. Oh, now I can hear you more cheerful.
Sienna T Radio, making your day brighter, one song at a time. Looking for conversations on the world of broadcasting, sports media, and from time to time, my favorite sports teams? Listen to Broadcast Map with me, Ali Musa. To learn more about the show and to view the upcoming schedule, like the Broadcast Map Facebook page. Search Broadcast Map.
All right, folks, there you see the website in its fullest. This is the Joe Marino website, www.thejoemarino.com. And as you can see, you've got Joe Marino wearing a herd mentality cap, I believe. And he's also got something else on. It looks like a buffalo shirt on. It doesn't exactly say Bills, but you could see here on the website where I've just clicked on events, and of course there's contact, podcast, herd mentality, books, and about area as well. Those are areas as well that you can get into. It says right here on the front page, home of your favorite football podcast, providing authentic analysis rooted in film study and analytics. Any guesses on what he's talking about? I'm going to go with Buffalo. I'm going to go with the Bills on this one. I'm really going to go with the Bills. I think that's for Locked On Bills. Speaking of Locked On Bills, you could see that even on the front page, he has a link or he has links to where you can listen to Locked On Bills, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Bills. Locked On Bills, the podcast, is your daily ticket to stay ahead of the game and be the first to know the latest news, analysis, and insider info for the Buffalo Bills and the National Football League. Hosted by Joe Marino, the Locked On Bills podcast provides Bills Mafia with expert local analysis, film breakdowns, hot stories, and coverage of all aspects of the Bills franchise. The Locked On Bills podcast takes you beyond the scoreboard for the inside scoops on the biggest stories from within the Bills locker room and all over the NFL. The Locked On Bills podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Other podcasts include Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, which is a podcast where NFL experts Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs break down professional and college scouting roster construction, team building salary, cap management, and much more. Don't miss out on the most comprehensive look at building a successful NFL franchise. Now, you may be wondering, what is First Read? Well, First Read is this. Fantasy football is a numbers game, but where do the numbers come from? Fantasy Points, COO, Brett Whitefield, and draft expert Joe Marino bring you the first read on film and analytics during their show on the Fantasy Points Podcast Network. So just to recap, Locked On Bills and Locked On NFL Scouting are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. First Read is a part of the Fantasy Points Podcast Network, powered by the Fantasy Points data. Brett and Joe break down the intersection of tape and data, providing the necessary context into the two essential branches of the NFL analysis. So there you go. You got First Read, Locked On NFL Scouting, Locked On Bills, and of course, links right now for Herd Mentality. We got a Herd Mentality shop. We got a subtext. We got a Substack. We got a Discord. We got the whole package for Herd Mentality. We got the whole package. What a day to build the Bills community with all things we got. All right, let's go over the books here and then we'll bring up our announcement that we got to bring in. So these books, as you can see, I'm going to share the screen one more time. These books, as you can see, are the books Joe has recently offered and written. You got Buffalo's Run, which is on the website and available at $14.95 plus, where you will be able to relive the most memorable football season in the history of the Buffalo Bills with insights and analysis from expert author Joe Marino. You also have Joe Marino offering the book Go Bills, which is for $25 on sale, even on the website. Get the beautiful book that presents the history of the Buffalo Bills football team with full color photographiality and fascinating text. Anyways, you could buy yourself a copy of Go Bills or Buffalo's Run exclusively on the website. I won't touch on what listeners are saying about the podcast, especially Locked On Bills, but there are a lot of things going on, especially events like Joe picks the Bills live, a Discord exclusive Wednesday, September 3rd on the Herd Mentality Discord live stage. Or how about this? On September 6th, Saturday, before the big game on Sunday, it's free admission, but it's a Rally on the River home opener festival, September 6th at Buffalo River Works. Live music, live broadcast from UGR, I-bounce houses, rides, and attractions, local vendors, live chalk artists, mafia boat rides, watch party, and more. Doors open at 10 a.m. Doors open at 10. Boat parade at 1. Official after party at 3. with special guest Joe Marino. Joe's got a lot of events going on. Another one that's a live Discord. There's a multiple dates for that as well. Not exactly sure what that is, but you could find out more by checking it out yourself. All right, I mentioned there was an announcement for football fans. So since we started this part of the show with football news, we're going to continue before we get back to baseball and wrap this up. Football fans, since our 2 episodes that are only available on Sports for Beginners, the podcast, of the Bills preseason action between the G-Man Giants, which they lost by a score of 34-25, and then the other show we did, that was after the Bills lost 38-0 to the Chicago Bears. This one was the Buccaneers getting beat 23-19 by the Buffalo Bills. Well, get excited because Bills playing in prime time on Sunday, September 7th, 2025. Get excited because immediately following Dolphins postgame, Dolphins and Colts from Lucas Oil Stadium, before they kick off our Bills pregame show that we call it, which we call Before They Kick Off, is doing a Sunday Night Football Bills Ravens pregame show right after Dolphins postgame. But wait, there's more. Don't forget, even though it's a prime time game and we're doing a pregame show on the day of the game, join us after the game on the day after the game for the first edition of Bills postgame. That's right, it's a Sports for Beginners triple play 2-game recaps, one featuring the Fish and the Colts. By Fish, I mean the Dolphins and the Colts from week 1, the other featuring the Ravens and the Bills on Bills postgame, and right after the Dolphins postgame, which features the Colts and the Dolphins from Lucas Oil Stadium, just before the postgame show of the Highmark Stadium Showdown on Sunday Night Football. As it is Before They Kick Off Sunday Night Football edition. You'll find out when the next Before They Kick Off is on Sport for Beginners, but you'll also find out when the next Bills postgame is, and you'll find out about that on the Monday after the game, which is Sunday, September the 7th. So Monday, September the 8th, you will find out when is the next Bills postgame. And on game day, ahead of the Ravens series, you will find out when the next Before They Kick Off will be. Spoiler alert, it will be another primetime game. And on the Bills postgame show before the game is done, before the breakdown of the show is over, right at the end, you will find out when the next Bills postgame is. It's a on the ice and behind the benches double play, though, as we will have Bills postgame and Dolphins postgame all in one. So a triple play on Sports for Beginners, including Dolphins postgame before they kick off, and of course, Bills postgame. Double play on the ice and behind the benches, Bills postgame and Dolphins postgame in the order of Dolphins postgame before we go to Bills postgame. But you could choose how you want to check it out. You won't want to miss a moment of the action. As for Weekly in Sports, that'll do it until September. Check into our Discord server if you are not subscribed to it. Check into the Discord server whether you are subscribed or not, because we will be providing you with the chance to get your podcast that you listen to or the broadcaster that you listen to be given an opportunity to be shouted out on this podcast during that segment. You will also be able to drive the show at a certain time in a certain month. Halloween is coming up in a month's time because we're at the end of August, my friends. So Halloween is coming up in a month's time, but 1 month at a time. And as I mentioned before, one series at a time. Before I forget, here is how things look. And let's go by our finals so far. As we have been talking about all episode long, the Red Sox have beaten the Orioles 3-2. Their record is now 75-60. The Orioles are 60-74 with the loss. The Astros have defeated the Rockies 4-3 to improve a record of 74-60. Rockies who have been mathematically eliminated from the playoffs are at 38-96 in terms of records. Tough one for the Pirates today. They fall 4-1 to the Cardinals. 66-69 is their record for the Cardinals. For the Pirates, it is 59-76. Still ongoing. Brewers down by 2, bottom of the ninth. They trail 6-4 to the Diamondbacks. And in the top of the sixth, the Cubs lead the Giants 3-2 in the top of the sixth. Still to come tonight, the Braves taking on the Phillies at 6:45 p.m. Eastern, and then later at the 7 p.m. mark, 10 minutes after 7 p.m., the Mets and the Marlins will go to battle, followed later at 7:40 p.m. by the Yankees and the White Sox from Chicago going down. How does it stand in the wild card? Well, the Blue Jays, with the win last night and the loss by the Tigers to the Athletics yesterday, have now the best record in baseball at 78-56. Detroit with a record of 78-57. Houston, record of 74-60. They also were playing today, so they won. So they stay in the AL West leaders. They currently have a 2-game lead on the Seattle Mariners in their division. The Royals are 69-65. They are 8.5 games behind the Tigers. But before the Tigers loss yesterday, they were 9 games back of the Tigers. Meanwhile, in the American League East Division, the Blue Jays remain top dogs. How long will they remain top dogs? Well, we will see. The Blue Jays are at 78-56, currently 3.5 games up on the Boston Red Sox, who are at 75. They are at 75-60. The Baltimore Orioles, and still 18 games out of the division. Tampa Bay Rays are at 64-69. The Yankees have yet to play, but their record, as we sit here, is 73-60. By the time you hear this, the Yankees will either be 74-60 or 73-61. We don't know what the record will be. And of course, for the White Sox, they will either be 49-85 or 48-86. We won't know until the game goes final. That is it for us. Thank you so much for being with us. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Next time on Weekly in Sports, we'll either be in October or, if we can do it, before the last series of the season, which features the Blue Jays and the Tampa Bay Rays from Toronto, Ontario, in Toronto, I should say, before that final series kicks off on Friday, September 26, 2025. We will be looking ahead to what to expect for the Pittsburgh Penguins. How have the Bills performed so far? And much more. Of course, we also will provide you with our overall thoughts as we enter the last game of the season, the last games of the season for the Blue Jays for the regular season. As I said before, right now, the Blue Jays are in a good spot to make the playoffs. They are in a good spot, but that can change. So that is it for us. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you all on the next edition of Sports for Beginners. Love one another. See you soon.
Thank you for joining us today for your weekly dose of sports content. If you have any questions or thoughts on this show that you'd like to let our host know about, simply send us a voice message on Anchor and let us know what you think we can improve on to help us out on the show. And remember that it is not goodbye, it is until next time. See you Wednesday.
Bills are happening now. They're making it happen now. You've got the spirit, a lot of spirit, yeah. You've got the spirit.